Hello, Andrew here again, yet again, and today it's episode 147. And we're continuing in Matthew's Gospel today, chapter 20, verses 17 to 19. Now, here we pick it up in verse 17. While Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside by themselves and said to them on the way, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and on the third day he will be raised." So we see Jesus is on the move again. Over the last little while we've seen that he's in Perea. This is the area on the other side of Jordan, on what we think is on the east bank, the part of what is modern day Jordan, and he has been ministering there for some time. We don't know how long, but we've picked up some of the things he's been doing over the last little while. And now he has the sense that it's time again for him to start moving towards Jerusalem. And as I said, I think he's probably got the time clock in his mind that he needs to be there for Passover. Now, apparently this is the third time in this gospel that, I didn't check, it's just the heading on my Bible said it. This is the third time that he's had this little talk. It's the issue of what's going to happen to him. And it's important that things are repeated, particularly things that are important are repeated. And especially with things that are unpalatable. They needed to hear it, just to make sure that they think, oh, I've heard that one before, and hear it, and hear it, and hear it again. And because this will ultimately shape how the disciples see, eventually. Yet, as we're about to see in our next episode, they still don't get it. So, we'll pick that up in the next episode. So, a few days ago, I was listening to Andy Stanley. I think I've already mentioned him. And he was giving a message on why his churches, and he's a mega church pastor in the United States, on why the churches in which he's the leader have decided to cancel in-person services until the end of the year. Now, he apparently has come in for a lot of criticism from his own people and from other church leaders. He's been accused of bowing the knee to Caesar and of all that kind of stuff. He's been told that he's living out of fear. This is because of the whole COVID thing. His retort is that if he'd given in to fear, he'd be opening. The title of his address starts with the word "not in it to win," which is the title that I've therefore given to this, because I'm going to be using a lot of Stanley in the next few minutes in what you hear. You can look it up on YouTube. Just type in the words "not in it to win" Andy Stanley, and it should be the first one comes up, and it's about 34 minutes long, and it's well worth a watch, maybe more than once, to actually get what he's saying. It's a very thoughtful message, to get it if you haven't been exposed to this kind of thing before. His understanding of the gospel, what the good news is, actually goes back to passages like the one we've got before us, the one that we're considering today. And what he says is that Jesus is not in this to win, at least not according to the rules of the world. He ultimately wins his game, the game that he's playing, by losing theirs. Jesus sets out with the express intention of losing. He's not looking forward to it, but he knows it must be done. I know it's hard for us to get our heads and hearts around. We want to be on the winning side. We live in a world obsessed with winning, and winning is almost always at the expense of others. Winning in our world is a zero-sum game. If there are winners, there have to be losers, and we don't want to become losers. So Jesus comes to be a loser, so ultimately the rest of us can be winners. So I'm going to quote extensively from Andy Stanley, because he actually says it so well. And while he's speaking into the American context, so much of his analysis is relevant to us. Stanley talks about what he talks about a number of things. I'm not putting everything in here, but one of the things he talks about is what he calls the current culture war Christianity, which if you start to think about what he's saying here, and I'm just going to give his main points, you'll see it all around us. And this current culture, this culture war Christianity, is obsessed with winning. He marks these traits as characteristics of culture war Christianity. 1. It sets the church up to be a tool of politicians rather than the conscience of the nation. And you've just got to look and see the way in which the church is being used by politicians to advance their own causes. It's defined by what it's against. And that's the thing that really gets me. So much of Christianity today, evangelical Christianity, the part of the church that I'm part of and that I love, so much of it defines itself by all that it's against, not what it's for. And you've just got to start checking out YouTube and you'll see these same names popping up again and again and again, these same heroes of the faith. And most of their messages are things that they're against, all the demons that they're seeing around them, and not so much what they're actually for. It forces the church into a defensive posture, and I think that's true. Because we're looking at the rest of the world as being out to get us. And so we've got to push back. We've got to be defending ourselves. And it comes across as more concerned about winning than loving. More concerned with winning than loving. It's fueled by a fear of losing something. And isn't that true? Just think about it. What is the main thing we're heard? We're going to be losing our freedoms, etc., etc., etc. And it does not reflect the first century Jesus model. It's in fact the opposite of what Jesus taught and modeled. And I, with Stanley, am convinced that that's the case. It's all about power and control. And Jesus refuses to play that game. In fact, he played to lose that game, not to win it. Jesus was playing a different game entirely, to a different set of rules, to a different definition of what winning looks like. In fact, Jesus played to lose so the other side could win. I realise that in many ways that this is what I've been pointing to over the past few episodes, that Jesus' kingdom model steps out of the competition to get to the top of the pile, where power is exercised, and rather invites us in the kingdom model to work for the health, the welfare, the well-being of others, for their prosperity and their success, so that they can be all that they can become. So Stanley points us to Philippians 2, where Paul describes the mission of the one who was God and joined us as a human being, taking upon himself the very nature of a servant. Stanley defines a servant as one who wakes up every single day thinking about how to better serve someone else. One who is committed to leveraging themselves, their resources, for the benefit of someone else. Wow. Think about that all for a moment. That the servant realizes that their role is to serve and to improve the lot of the person they're serving. And this describes Jesus of Nazareth. And he points out, if we're his body, it should also be describing us. Wow. So we have some more choice quotations. The church always looks more like Christ when we are defending other people's rights rather than our own. Which is right. The church always looks more like Christ when we are giving away rather than demanding our way. If you aren't willing to lose to go to the back of the line, then don't bother getting in my line, Jesus might say. Wow, I think he's right. I think he's right. But wait, there's more. The disciples might ask, Jesus, if you are arrested and killed, how are we going to win? That's how I'm going to win, Jesus would say. I'm going to Jerusalem to lose their game, and in doing so will win the game that I've been inviting you to play for 3 years. Jesus is talking about a completely different kind of kingdom, where the first will be last and the last will be first. Because in the end, there is no first and there is no last, not in Jesus' kingdom. This is what we've been talking about, as I said, over the last episodes. This kingdom looks very different from the one we're currently living in. And a bit more Andy Stanley. So they might follow up with, Jesus, how are you going to build your church if you're arrested and crucified? That's how I'm going to build my church, he would say. And the early church went out with radical, selfless love, and the powers of hell and the Roman military might could not stop it. It's true, it's all there. The only question Jesus asks of us is, will you follow me? Will you take up your cross and not your rights? Your cross and follow me. We are not in it to win it for ourselves. We are in it for others. I also remember, just popped into my mind, reading a book. I'm trying to think who the author was. And he's just talking about the early church. He wasn't a historian, he was a sociologist. And commenting it was because of the selfless love that the church exploded. They had plagues going through the Roman Empire, these epidemics. And all the nobility, all the wealthy, everybody who could get out of the city left. And it was the Christians who came back in. Mainly a lot of Christian women who came back in to minister, to serve, to wait upon, to actually work with people who were very, very sick, running the risk themselves of getting the illnesses and diseases that they had, and many of them did, and died. But it was their selflessness that actually was one of the things that was the point of power with the early church, that they followed the way of Jesus, that they determined to serve the other team so that the other team might win, even though they themselves might lose. So we're not in it to win for ourselves. We're in it for others. He comments, when the church leverages the tools of the kingdom of this world, it looks weak. I think he's right. Well, I hope this got you thinking, reflecting, questioning. It certainly has me. God bless you.